Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal Podcast. Our guest today is Charles Craggett. Charles is the founder of Become the Authority, a marketing automation agency. When he's not running his agency, Charles enjoys training mixed martial arts and spending time with his family. Charles, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Krish, thanks for having me on. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. The topic I'd asked you just before we hit record, and you'd picked a couple, and we're going to talk about those to the extent possible in the next 30 to 45 minutes. Without further ado, I want to get started. Let me socialize the topic, and then I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and your company to our audience, Charles.
Okay.
So the topics we have chosen loosely, at least to begin with, is using automated systems to increase sales conversions and essentially optimizing businesses. You mentioned you're working with you work with other companies on a B2B basis, and they have B2C clients, and they're essentially helping blue collar workers. And you had mentioned a gap that you've seen in systems, and part of what you do is trying to bridge that gap, right? That's from what I understood based on our quick conversation.
Yeah.
So if you could give a brief intro, Charles, about you and your company, and then we'll go into the topic.
So I'm Charles. I'm with Become the Authority. Um, what we focus on doing is implementing strong software systems into businesses where that's typically been ignored. We work usually with people in the trades, so think roofers, plumbers, electricians. A lot of these guys, they're very disorganized. There's no system for keeping track of data, no systems for keeping track of who sold and who didn't sell. And that can be the difference between having a $1 million of a year roofing company and a $5 million a year roofing company. Is just by how well are your systems dialed in and how well do your workflows work. So our team is there to bridge the gap where there's been between tech and the blue collar space. We implement great software into typical businesses as well as different AI tools to systematize things, make it easier for them to handle customer relations, and ultimately close more sales.
Perfect. I've not had an opportunity to talk to anyone yet who's working in that space, so I'm kind of excited here. Plenty to ask you. Let's get started. The first thing is, my direct experience as somebody who's been living, in a house for years, is that I'm trying to think, I think it's Service Advisor. There's a couple of these companies where I go online or on the phone, there's a mobile app, and I'm trying to look for a particular service provider. It could be a plumber, it could be a roofer, and then they curate the list and send it out to these companies that are in the business in this neighborhood, say in the DC metro area, and then I start having this initial conversation with them, right? So that's my basic interaction. Can you sort of help us understand what the core problem is? Again, there is a problem, like you mentioned, between $1 to $5 million like annual revenue. What are some problems that you've seen, and how do you actually help address those problems? And then we can get deeper into each of those items.
So, one of the biggest problems is actually what you just brought up. A lot of these guys don't own their lead flow. So, they're constantly outsourcing to providers like that service provider or Angie's List or something like that, or Yelp, something of that nature, right? And what a lot of people don't know is that these companies tend to take a very big cut or a large lead cost for every person who comes through their system. And the reality is that these companies aren't doing anything that the companies I work with couldn't do. They just don't know how to run ads. They don't know how to turn their website into a funnel that generates leads. They don't have a system that sends text and email follow up. So by not owning their marketing, they're constantly outsourcing it. And that means they're at the mercy of these third party providers. And that means the third party providers can charge whatever they want. So our team is there to help bring the systems and tools that allow them to bring that marketing and those systems in house so that they can get leads at cost instead of with a significant markup, and ultimately have more control over how their brand is being perceived online and how they go about advertising themselves. So it's really about giving them their control back, ultimately saving them on marketing over time, and then making sure that all of the leads who come through the door are contacted and communicated with. Something that we see in the trade space a lot, unfortunately, is people will want information. They want to work with a contractor, but they have a lot of difficulty actually getting in contact with him. And that's because these guys have half baked websites, half baked CRMs, half baked systems, to where sometimes they might get the customer's information and sometimes they just don't. And then that person never
Okay.
gets reached out to. So,
I completely appreciate the problem there because I'll tell you, right, and a lot of people are watching this. Most of our audience is in the US as well, so I'm sure they can relate to this. I remember vaguely, Charles, that one of the contractors had actually told me that, when I don't remember, it was a little while ago, where when you look for a particular, when you enter the problem into this app essentially, and it tries to send out, they have a network of people who are serving this area, and based on whatever their algorithm is or what their percentages are or the markup is or commission is, you have a list of these providers that it recommends. And I think one of them told me that even if the user did not end up selecting, you can only pick one of the three, but they still had to pay the provider a certain amount of money no matter what, right? So it
yes,
was kind of painful for them as a small company, right? So I can see
yes,
it. So let me understand the way where you come into play here, right? So instead of these these providers registering into these systems like Angie's List or everything else that you just mentioned there, you're helping them sort of run their own websites, right? Own
yes.
systems and automation, so they're not losing money or a cut to the by giving a cut to these companies. They work with you and they can have those savings essentially, and you help them do the things that they are not necessarily comfortable doing or don't even know what they should be doing there essentially, right?
Yes, 100%. The reality is, you'll see people online. These service providers are generating leads online for anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15 to $20 per lead, and then immediately reselling it to a business for $100, $200, etc. So the markup can be massive, and over time it just eats away at your profitability. But if you're able to take it in house, even paying our agency retainer, you save so much money on your lead cost by taking ownership of it. But it's just like you said, if they don't have the systems, the tools, or the know how to do so, then how would they go about doing it? And that's where we come in.
Okay, I think now that 5 or 10 minutes in, I understand the problem, understand where you're coming. Right now, we can get deeper into this topic. So, let's say a service provider, let's say a plumbing company, for instance, or a roofing company, doesn't matter who they are, they want to sort of enroll in the process, right? How do they work with you? Like, how do they onboard onto your system? Is that self-serve, or do they reach out to you and you actually have to create an account for them? How does that initial process work?
So the initial process, as far as, I usually will meet a person or they'll come across a piece of my content online. They'll go to our website, getjobflowsystem.com. They'll sign up for what's called a marketing and systems audit. And what we do during that audit is we take a look at their online presence, see how they're marketing their business currently, and then we also get access to any of their internal systems. And what we do is we actually start trying to reach out to the business. So we record how long it takes to get a call back from the business. We record how long it takes to get a message back from the business. And we can actively show people where these people are coming in at, say, 12 o'clock p.m., but nobody's reaching out to them until 4. And if I'm looking for a plumber, my toilet's on the fritz, I don't have 4 hours to wait for a plumber to reach back out to me. So I'm likely going to call the next person on the list. And that's where they're losing opportunity. So once we show them all the different areas where they're losing opportunity, we create a custom marketing and systems proposal for them. It's based on their company size, their budget, where they're trying to go, what they want to scale up to, and the systems that they're interested in using, whether it's Facebook ads, Google Ads, SEO, website stuff, etc. Um, and then once they're in the door, we build out their internal systems as well. So strong CRMs, automated text and email follow up, a variety of different things. As far as the onboarding goes, there it is primarily self-service. We have it almost completely automated now. Once they decide to get started with us, it automatically auto-populates their CRM and everything like that. And there's just a few pieces that we have to go in and do manually, such as logging into their backends or logging into their online portals and stuff like that. But for the most part, it's completely self-service once a person gets started.
Okay. And then these providers, right? They're in the business of, like we said, right? Different providers, right? Plumbing and roofing are two examples. They know what they have to do when it comes to plumbing or when it comes to roofing, but their awareness and knowledge when it comes to systems and integration probably is not going to be. You assume, the expectation here and the assumption is that's not a whole lot, which is why you are able to provide value to them, right? Now, given that as the basic premise, Charles, how how do you educate them? In other words, if I ran a roofing company, maybe I had a website, and creating these are not difficult, and they've gotten much easier with a lot of these tools, right? You can use prompt engineering to create a bunch of these things today. I mean, you could have done something similar maybe a couple of years ago, but it's gotten a whole lot easier. But how is their what is their general skill level? Do you have to help them even build those initial sites, or point them to a platform where they can actually generate these websites? Or is the expectation that they have some of them in place before they actually come to you?
So, website redesign is actually one of the services that we offer to people. So, that's part of our marketing and systems audit is taking a look at the assets that they've already got, whether it be their website, their Google My Business page, their social media page, etc. And some of the websites we see, they're good. They just need a little bit of tweaking to them, and maybe we add our lead connecting forms and stuff like that, right? But other times the website is non-existent or it's just a bad website. No one's really going to convert from this, and that's when we would suggest our team rebuilding an entire website for them. And then, of course, that would mean getting them onto a platform where we can build out the website. We're typically building them on on WordPress, just for the sake of simplicity and quickness. Um, and then we are also building websites on the software Go high level as well.
Okay. Um, so let's say you help them create this, but my very first question there from a need standpoint,
Mm.
when it comes to a business of finding a roofing company, what is the typical habit, right? Do people go to Google these days? Are they going to ChatGPT? I mean, where are they going to actually finding these providers? I reckon they're still going to Google. So you would start with maybe search engine optimization, or given that people are interacting with ChatGPT and Claude and so much these days, are you then creating these sites to satisfy the answer engine optimization, the general, the Gen AI engine optimization, those requirements? How are you ensuring, or what are you doing to ensure that people are able to find these companies that come to you for help?
I was going to say, yeah. So we've been huge on search engine optimization. That's been our bread and butter since we started. But in the last year or so, we've gotten really aggressive with our AI implementation. And in addition to that, AEO. Um, so we do build the websites around being able to, uh, you know, tap into that answer engine optimization, right? But then the other thing that we've also spent time doing is our team will just feed a lot of data to these answer engines. That's honestly what you have to do is just be willing to feed as much information as possible to these answer engines about your business as possible. Um, so that's part of what we're doing as well. But yeah, the main way that we're making sure that the websites can be seen is through SEO, because that's where the bulk of our traffic is still coming from, is Google searches and things like that. But we have noticed more people coming in from ChatGPT, from Manus, from Claude. And so that's where we started putting the work in behind the AEO as well.
Okay. And even let's say if we just spoke search engine optimization for a second, right? I go into Google, I type what I'm looking for. There are a lot of these sponsored, there are ads essentially, right? In your
Yes.
experience, Charles, if you had to throw a number there, how many times out of 10, for instance, do people pick one of those sponsored ads and go with those companies versus the results that come through via organic search, right? In other words, organic results, I mean. So I'm searching for a roofing company in this metro, DC metro area. Google's going to serve me a bunch of ads, and then there's going to be some organic results. I was just curious to know. I have a few questions there, but the first question is, where are people mostly clicking?
A lot of people would think that since the sponsored ad is right there at the top, it would be the most clicked one. But honest to God, a lot of people will scroll right past that and they want to look for the first organic result that actually jumps out at them because they feel like they could trust this better, right?
I hear you.
In their mind, they're like, anyone who's paying maybe might not be the best sort of person for me. So there's going to be some people, they'll just click that one. And I would say it's probably about 50-50. And that's why I think that it's so important to dial in your organic SEO, even if you are running paid ads, which is why we usually stack those two services on top of each other. Because if they see that you're number one from a paid ad standpoint, and then they scroll past the ad, and the first business offering that they see organically is also your business, you've just doubled your authority in less than a second.
Wow, that's interesting to know. And then let's say you found somebody. Let's say you go to the organic results and then you click through. You're taken to a website. So the quality of that website, what role does it play? And here is what I mean by that, right? We have a few different products as a product company, right? We have B2C products and B2B products, and we take a lot of pain in making sure that the user experience and the interaction they have with the application. One of our products is a project management platform, so people can sign up and manage their work at home or school or in a small business, however they want to be able to do it. But the quality of the pages, the rendering, the UI, the UX, and the whole nine yards becomes extremely important for us as a product company. But if you take a website which is mostly static, right? I mean, there are a few things you can do from an interaction standpoint, but for the most part, let's say it is fairly static, and you're trying to hire a roofing company, and people don't, you're not looking for a roofing company every year, right? You're looking
Yeah.
for them like once in 10 years. Maybe you're looking for a plumber more often than that. So the frequency of your engagements is going to be lesser as the end user. So with that, if that makes sense, Charles, my question is, how much importance do people give to the quality of that site? Maybe the colors, maybe the UI, the UX, or do they not care and they only worried about the price and when can something be done? I'm just trying to understand what are the priorities generally, because based on that is how you're going to help design and present those pages to the end user, right? So I was just curious to know, where do you think people are giving more of the importance, and what are some things that are not that important?
So, our main focus when we're designing websites is simplicity. We want to make it as easy as possible for a person to contact us, right? So, we focus on having multiple buttons at various areas throughout the page. Some of the buttons will take you to a contact form. Others allow you to just call in directly. But the other main thing that we focus on too is making sure that the websites are optimized for mobile, because the vast majority of people are going to be visiting websites on their phones. So the websites in and of themselves can be relatively simple. You don't have to get overly design heavy or any of that stuff, right? But it is very important that the user interface is simple and it makes it easy for people to reach out to you and contact you. We don't worry a lot about us pages or things of that nature, right? We're there to solve a problem. So we present ourselves as a solution to their problem, We give them a variety of different ways they can contact us. And if they start scrolling up and down the page, they'll get numerous opportunities to contact us as they scroll, different buttons, small pop ups, things like that, right? And our main focus really is to get them off of the website and into our CRM so we can start messaging them and getting them booked for an appointment or something of that nature. Like my background is sales and marketing. Tech kind of came as a secondary thing to that. But I've always been a salesperson. And one of the easiest ways to close sales is to make it very easy for the customer to get in contact with you. And then once they get in contact with you, reaching out to them within 5 minutes, striking while the iron is hot. And so we want to make it easy for the user to give us their information, and we want to make it easy for our sales team to reach out to those customers as soon as possible and get them booked onto an appointment or handle a service.
Okay, I have a couple of more questions related to that, but I'll come to that in a bit. Let's go to the back-end systems, right? So now let's say there are a few different providers, again, roofers, plumbers, and so on. They have their own websites. They sign up with you, right? They're like, you know what, Charles, we need your help. Can you help us, increase our business? You collect the data, you collect the information, you help them build this website so they get searched whether through organic results or by paid, promotions on Google and other platforms. You find these things and they land on those websites. What happens from that point onwards? How does your integration work? I mean, if you could just give us an introduction to your system, right? The technology and the back end of your systems, how does it plug into the websites per se?
Okay. So we connect, we add our lead capture forms to all of our websites. We're primarily using a software called Go High Level to capture customer data and information. But the beautiful part is that we've actually synced that information with a software with a new AI tool called Manus. And
Okay.
now Manus will actually go through the process of reaching out to them via text message. We found that texting works best as far as getting a
Oh, no,
person to book
Charles,
an appointment.
sorry.
Oh, God.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I want I miss one thing here. I want to go to what you're talking about there
Yeah.
after I understand the initial part. So let's say I went to this website, right? There's a company, they provide roofing services. I go, perhaps I sign up there, I enter my details and I say hit submit. How does that data make its way from their system to yours, right? Because that's the very first thing you need. You need to know that Krish is actually looking for help with roofing and you
Hmm.
need to start the conversation there. So after I've entered my details, I'm presuming I will enter those details on each of the providers' independent and unique websites, correct? I go
Yes.
there, I enter this information, and what
Yes.
happens after that? Where does it get saved, and how do you extract the data from there to your system?
So the data is all. Are you familiar with Go High Level?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. So Go High Level is a pretty much all in one marketing CRM that is infinitely customizable for small business owners. And what we do, you can go and create lead capture forms inside of Go High Level, embed them on your website to capture people's data. And then once the
Okay.
data is captured over on the website, it populates inside of their Go High Level CRM.
Got you. Okay, makes sense.
That's when the AI chatbot takes over, begins texting them, tries to book an appointment. And then if they don't book via text, it sends a notification over to the sales team and it says, hey, call this person and try to get them on the schedule.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That makes sense, right? So you have that system that literally is integrated there. It has the data. And now Krish entered the information. I entered my requirements, my needs, what I'm looking for. And now it goes into that system. Does a human come into play? If so, when do they come into play? When does Charles come into play, right? I entered my data. It goes into that Go High system that you just mentioned. And I have the details there. What are some of the next things that happen? And when does someone like Charles come into play? Or do you ever come into play as a human in this workflow?
So me personally, I do not come into play. But we are pushing that data to maybe their sales manager, the representative who's going to be attached to that account, or some sort of office manager who's in charge of booking appointments or collecting people's data. So a human is introduced to the situation relatively quick, but we understand that as a human, you only have so much capacity, right? You could be on the phone booking an appointment with a lead when 3 new leads come in, right? So that's where we implement the AI systems to start reaching out to people so that we don't lose that 5 minute gap. We want to get to people within 5 minutes because that's when their problem is at the height of their thinking. You're striking when the iron is hot and you're getting to them before they can reach out to another person. Typically, the person who gets to the customer first gets the job. So we try to expedite that, whether we're passing the lead over to an office manager and having them call quickly, or if for some reason they aren't available, we use the AI systems to reach out to that person, immediately begin the conversation, and then hand it off to a person at another point.
Okay, couple of things there, right? One you said is typically the company that reaches out the quickest to the customer ends up getting the job, right? For the most part, at least, right? Maybe people are, if it's a more expensive problem that they're trying to solve, maybe replacing the roof, they're going to do a lot of shopping. But if they're going to fix a few missing shingles, perhaps they're not looking to shop that much. And if it's raining outside, they need to get this done with a sense of urgency.
Yes.
So, how does, what are some things that you put together? All that I did was I answered some questions. And, if you take me as an example, Charles, I want to spend the least amount of time in entering the data, right? I want to be asked the questions, the least number of questions as the customer. And I won't be asked those questions one time, certainly not more than once, because we all have different fish to fry. So given that, how does the system, what kind of tools does it use or does it integrate with? Or maybe it uses some LLMs there to tell that, hey, if Krish is entering, this is a problem. These are the 10 potential solutions, and these are the types of what the range of costs that he might be looking at. And here is how I want to put together this information and send it to Krish, maybe in a text message or through a phone call, whatever that is. So he has all of the information that you think he might need to make the decision and sort of hire this contracting company without needing to keep shopping, for instance, right?
Yes.
So I can imagine a lot of permutations and combinations here. Again, the size of the project is one, the urgency with which you want to get done is another. The price that what it's going to cost them is surely important as well. And maybe there are payment plans. Maybe there is not a need for payment plans. So how does all of this come together? So what you send out in your initial response to that customer is going to have as much as they might need to see, not overwhelm them, obviously, but at the same time has enough information for them to make those decisions, right? So what
Yes.
are some attributes and metrics that you look to integrate, and how do you go about doing that through these systems, and where does the data actually come from?
So let's actually continue the walkthrough because it'll answer your question. So somebody fills out their form on Go High Level, right? Or they fill out the form on the website and it passes to our Go High Level. That's going to have their name, excuse me, ooh, their name, their email address, their phone number, and their address. Those are the 4 pieces of initial data that we collect from a customer. Then we're going to push them to a secondary survey where they can tell us about the problem in detail. They can upload photos of the problem if they need to, if they have photos, and they can share any additional information that we might need with them, right? Once that data gets passed over to our Go High Level system, our system reads that information, and the initial contact with the customer is more of a confirmation where it says, hey, Krish, we got your information about the roof replacement you were interested in doing at 123 Main Street. Can you tell us a little more about that? Right. And it sounds conversational. The idea is that the bot is trained not to focus on selling or giving pricing or anything like that. The bot is trained on getting you to book an estimate appointment so that we can get our
Okay.
salespeople out there and they can do the selling.
Okay, makes sense. The question I have for you then, Charles, is so you said the go high level, right? The product that the CRM that you're actually integrating. Let's say you're working with seven different service providers. Let's presume that all of them are in the business of roofing and they all serve the DC metro area, right? They've all used your services. Now the data goes into the CRM. Now, given the fact that they might have come through a krish.com website and they're looking to hire me or they're not sure, they enter the details. But when the system goes into the CRM, you now have six other providers who can help the same customer that are part of your system as well. Now, the question I have here is, does that not become like service advisor or like thumbtack, for instance? Because now, even though the customer data came through krish.com, now would you not, I mean, I'm just curious, would you only worry about sending details to krish.com and sort of tying this customer to this provider? But what if the six other companies actually had a better price on their data getting this done, or they were more available? How does that work? You know what I mean? I'm asking one side from a conflict of interest standpoint, but on the other side, what makes the most sense because you want to solve the customer's problem. There's many different ways to skin this cat. I was just curious to see how it works.
So typically, we don't work with people who are in the same service within 50 miles of each
Ah,
other.
okay.
Okay, so that's one way that we avoid it. Number two is that the CRM is not Charles's CRM. It's not become the authority's CRM. This is a CRM that we built custom for that company and handed to them. So everything that comes through that CRM is exclusive to them.
Oh, I see what you mean. Makes sense. Okay.
Yes.
So in other words, okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So they own the data, they own the advertising, they own the follow up, everything like that. Our team is really just there to manage it, make updates, make changes, and essentially provide support after the initial build out is done.
Okay, makes complete sense. Now, let's say I work with a landscaping company, right? I know him, he comes, helps us with mowing lawn and whatnot. When I talk to a lot of people who are in that business of providing these services, Charles, again, they are a small business, right? They have a few people, a lot of their time is taken in doing the actual labor, the work. So they don't have much time for this. So certainly they need help from someone like you to actually, and your company to get this done. But to play the devil's advocate, or just to have a contrarian view here, my question to you is, why would they? The problem we mentioned earlier was if they go to these other companies that let them on board, they're going to have to give them a lot of, a lot of their revenue ends up being shared with those companies, right? The margins are higher. You have to give a cut of what you're earning. At the same time, they don't have to do the marketing, the sales, and any of those things, right? They're like, you know what? It's almost like going to Udemy or Coursera, for instance, and publishing your course and hoping that somebody's going to be there and look for that particular course and find you. So how does that balance work? Do you work with companies that are of a certain size that they prefer to go this model than the other model? What are some things that you've seen from people coming to you for help as customers that seem to work better for this group of customers than the other group of customers?
So where our value lies, right? You could very easily give $3,000 a month to, say, an advertising platform, um, just to get leads, right? That doesn't include follow up. It doesn't include emails, text messages. It doesn't include long term follow up after a person has gone out, given them an estimate. It's just a name and some information, right? That's what a lot of these service providers are giving to people. What we do is we essentially give you the ability to bring it in house. And by bringing it in house, you're able to get access to not just the person's data, not just the customer's data, but all of these different tools in order to convert them. Now you have text message marketing, now you have email marketing, now you have SEO, now you have paid ads running. It's more value driven where we're like, if you work with us, we'll do all of the things that that service provider was already providing, but at a much lower rate that's easier on your pockets because you own all the assets outright and we're just
Okay.
managing them for you.
Makes complete sense. Now, let's say you have a bunch of people who went to the website, you collected their data, and you've started to work with them. From your service standpoint, it's not just, let me rephrase it. Are you also going to be responsible for booking those actual appointments, following up with them on those appointments, and whatnot?
So that depends. We do have VA placement as part of our service. So we could, in theory, handle the appointment booking, but usually there's already somebody in the company that's handling that, and we're just going to give them more opportunities to do so.
Okay.
So it's really part of that marketing and systems audit. We want to see not only how are you getting leads, but how are you handling them when they come in? Who's speaking to them? Who do we need to send them to? Who's going to be booking them? Who's going to be going out and seeing them? We need to know all of this data so that we can create a number one, the CRM that's going to capture all the data, but then all of the automated workflows to make sure that the right information goes to the right place.
Okay, and I can see this become very interesting because I can think, I'm not a product manager, but I do play that role for work that we do in the company.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of like five requirements already here, right, Charles? One is you got some, let's say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you got a request from Krish, and Krish is looking to help with replacing some shingles. Now, again, you mentioned it's exclusive to a company, right? So the CRM is not shared across companies, so there's no sense, no notion of competition per se. But that being said, let's say I entered this data at 1 o'clock, and you had mentioned that the sooner you reach out to the customer and you close the deal, the better off you are, because that's just how this particular business works, right? Strike the iron and it's hot. But that being said, let's say at 1:05, let's say somebody else in this area is reaching out to that company, right? So you have a second entry that shows up to fixing shingles. Let's presume that I needed 5 shingles to be replaced, and that next customer who came in 5 minutes later wants 25 of them to be replaced, just hypothetically, in which case it would make more sense for that company to work with the other customer than with me, because they're going to make more revenue, right? So how do you, I mean, do you, given that you have this data, there is a way to optimize or upsell or do a number of things that relates to this business, right? I mean, do you do something like that? Or if you were to do it in future, I mean, how would you approach this? I mean, is this even a sensible problem? In other words, let's say my example that I gave you right here.
You know, it's not a problem that people run into super often. In the sense that when we set up these systems, the idea is that we want to at least create some sort of contact touch. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a deep touch. The touch could be a phone call. The touch could be the confirmation email. The touch could be a conversational text message that gets them to communicate with the company. So if we had someone that came in and maybe they just wanted a light repair job, and then 5 minutes later someone's coming through and they want an entire roof replacement, they would still get communication within 5 minutes, whether it would be somebody picking up the phone and calling them or them receiving an AI message, just because of how we built out the systems. So it's not something that we really run into too often. And then we're able to identify based on the information that they submit in that initial inquiry, because someone who's like, I need shingles replaced, and then someone who clicks roof replacement, we know the roof replacement is going to be a hotter lead. So we're going to tag that and make sure and basically send it out as priority to that person's office team and say, reach out to this person first. They need a roof replacement.
Okay.
Let the AI handle the person who maybe needs 5 shingles, but get on this person who might be worth $20,000 worth of revenue. You see what I'm saying?
No, it makes sense. The reason I ask is, as you make these systems more automated, there's more integrations you could do. Theoretically, I was just wondering whether this something like this might make sense, which is you collect the data. Because right now you're following up through an email or a text message or a phone call. But let's say you want to scale this further, right, Charles? You would probably want to automate a lot more of this, for instance, right? You're like, what, because you have the intelligence based on the data that you actually collect. Because if somebody called in at 1 o'clock and someone else entered data at 1:05, and if you had a way to, give them a 20% off by making the commitment right then, for instance, because I had somebody come into my house some time ago and he was like, hey, you can take, like, I don't know, you can shop for other roofing companies, but this was to replace the roof actually, because it's a lot of money. But then I was surprised because when he walked out the door, he said, Krish, if you make the commitment right now, I'm going to give you like a 15% discount. I mean, that was a sizable number given the base cost of what it was going to cost. But I was like, you know what? I don't know. I can make the commitment. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I may not be able to make the commitment. I was just curious to know if people are, if you wanted to close that deal, would following up through a phone call or a text message is more prudent, or having them make that commitment to say, you know what? It's not going to be $250 if you made a commitment right now, but it's going to be $175. So people are like, you know what? I'm not even going to look for somebody else, and I close the deal. So I was curious to know how, as your system progresses and improves, do you expect to have, like, what would be some of the features that you perhaps don't have today, Charles, that you expect to be able to integrate into your platform as months go by?
So that would be one area that we try not to do that. Like, I tend to work with more well-established tradespeople. They're already doing at least $500,000 in revenue per year. So they tend to be a little more systematized or built out. And they're not the types of people that would do the race to the bottom on pricing, so to speak. So that wouldn't be something that we would want to train the bot to do. What we might do, and what we have done in the past, is we have a pop up that comes up on the website that says you can give us your information and get a 10% off coupon, right? But they still have to take some form of action. So this isn't a form that says, I'm committing to roofing services or I need roofing services or something like that. This is us immediately saying, hey, if you're interested in working with us, we can save you 10%. Just give us your name, email, and phone number, and we'll send you your coupon. Right.
Okay,
So we
makes sense.
start from there, and then it'll push them over and ask them, by the way, tell us about your roofing problem. And usually by that point, if they've already filled out the coupon form, it makes sense for them to fill out the secondary survey where they could talk more about whatever brought them to a roofing website in the first place, because it's not, no one's going to come on the lot unless they're interested in this particular product. It's a roof. It's not energy drinks or a new car or something like that. You're not just browsing on a roofing website, you see. So you would maybe put the potential for a discount on the front end right at the beginning as sort of a coupon, but we wouldn't be looking at maybe training the bots to close the deals and then offer discounts in order to close said deals. Now, I think what maybe we could do is we could program them with predetermined pricing for some of the smaller jobs, but some of the larger, more complex jobs that my company tends to work, like when we're working with these trades companies, they're doing more complex jobs. They're not like replacing one toilet, they're replacing 50 toilets for an apartment complex, you know,
I see.
that sort of
Right.
thing, right? So that's not something that you can necessarily quote over the phone or that's not something you can necessarily quote using a bot. But if someone just wants a simple toilet replacement, you could maybe quote that with a bot, you know? So
Right, absolutely.
so that could be something, that could be an area where we could at least like give out quotes to people for the lower end jobs and then just push the more high end stuff immediately over to the salespeople so they can get that personalized communication that ultimately closes those types of deals.
Makes sense. We have about 10 minutes to go, so I'll ask you a couple of last questions and give you an opportunity to ask me anything you want, Charles. So the last couple of questions, the second last one is, what have you seen by way of changes in consumer behavior given the advent of AI? Right now, people go to the website, enter details. That's standard stuff that we've done for months or for years, for instance, right? So, what are some things that you see has changed from a consumer behavior or an interaction standpoint? And the second part of my question is, what are you able to do now that you were not able to do before because of the availability of a lot of these AI tools and technologies, right? Those are my questions.
So, from a consumer standpoint, doing what we do, AI has been more beneficial for my company and the company that I'm typically working with, not so much for the consumers.
Okay.
Because from my standpoint, especially when it comes to people who are looking for trades-based services, uh, they're not really responding to AI all like that. They don't like the AI ads. They don't like um, they don't like that Google is trying to shoehorn the AI suggestions right at the beginning. Just a lot of the sentiment I've been getting back has been like, man, they're just trying to force AI on us. I don't like it that much, and this and that. And
Ah, that's
and
interesting.
so in our case, AI has been more beneficial as far as implementing how we deliver services on our side, where it's like, okay, cool, AI can take this data and make sure it gets distributed to the right people. AI can intake a customer for me and immediately write their first few messaging campaigns and send it over to a person for approval. So that's where AI has been most beneficial for us, is optimizing our workflow. Whereas when it comes to pushing AI to consumers, they're not really that interested in it as it relates to us as a roofing company or something like that, right? They're like, dude,
Oh,
I just want my roof fixed. I don't want to talk to a bot back and forth about this. Someone just get out here and tell me how much it's going to cost to fix the damage on my roof. So our focus is how can we make that as smooth as possible? And right now, adding some sort of AI step for the consumer just doesn't really seem like it would be the most optimal solution for that.
okay. The last thing I want to ask you here related to this particular topic and the item is, um, so we understand the problem, we understand the solution, we also understand the value that you and your company they bring to the table. Now, let's say I pose this as a challenge, right? Which is I go search for kind of help. It goes into the system, the data is collected. I could theoretically, right, Charles, today have an AI integration there because Krish explained a problem that he has. Maybe it's a roof, maybe it's in the bathroom, maybe it's in the kitchen, maybe it's an appliance. Based on that description, there are possible diagnoses and solutions that could be there. I could have done this myself by going to ChatGPT, but let's say I did not do it and I went to this website to enter these details. There's two ways, right? The one way is you reach out to them, see how this company can help them and close the deal. But the other approach, which again there's pros and cons, is you actually relying on these models, LLMs that relate to this business, and sending out to the customer, hey Krish, I know you entered this as a problem. Here are three things that could possibly be happening: A, B, and C. If it's A, you don't have to do anything at all. If it's B, maybe you can do some things yourself. And if it's C, we can come out there and help you. By virtue of doing something like that, I personally think credibility is established because now you've actually started helping me already without me having spent any money yet. But on the flip side of it, Charles, you're ending up becoming a not-for-profit organization because if I pick A or B,
Yeah.
it's not bringing you any revenue. But that's kind of where things could be going, right? Because people are looking up ChatGPT and other places. Whether they go to a lawyer, they do a lot of the research up front. And if they're going to go to a plumber, they're going to do this themselves. So by not providing the service on this other side, companies may not be doing themselves a favor because the user is then going to go someplace else and do it. So I just want to get, this is my last question from a technical standpoint. What are your thoughts on this as a service provider who's in this space of helping those customers and your businesses?
So my response to that would be from a you have to understand who your ideal customer is. And for most of our clients, their ideal customers are not do-it-yourselfers. So they know that they have a premium service that charges premium prices for whatever service it is that they provide. And that's because they're more well branded, they have more specialized abilities, they have better tools, they have this, they have that, whatever it is, right? But long story short, they tend to charge more. So they're not looking to really be of service to the DIYer. So the
Right.
person who's going to respond to, hopefully they would maybe just come across our blogs or our social media content. That's where we give away a lot of the sort of free information, right? So we'll be on social media and we'll say, this is how you can replace a shingle, or this is how you can do this is how you can do that. And ideally, when they go to search for that particular problem, maybe our video comes up and that's the top of funnel. Maybe our blog comes up and that's the top of funnel for them. But ultimately, if you're a DIYer, we want you to stop at the video or the free content. And if you're not a DIYer, if you're somebody that's like, dude, I just want this problem solved, I work too hard, I don't want to keep working, you know,
Right.
they're the person that's going to fill out the form and say, get out here and fix my roof immediately. I'm not climbing up there. Like,
Makes sense, right?
yeah.
So thank you for that. My last question to you is about food, but before I go there, I don't have any more technical questions for you. Do you have any questions for me, Charles?
How long have you been a CTO?
Uh, well, our company is many years old. We launched our first product about 5 years ago. I've done this work for some other companies that I've worked for, but for my own, that I'm working for right now, it's about, I want to say like maybe 6 years or so. Yeah.
Okay. And then what kind of products are you guys typically pushing out?
Um, a few different products, and I'll share some links with you as well, and hopefully we can work together at some point.
Sure.
The first product we launched, Charles, was about 4 years ago, a little bit more than four, is the project management platform, right? It's snowpal.com. You can go in and sign up, through one of the social media accounts and whatnot, and you can manage your work. Let's say if you, as Charles, you have a lot of clients that you're working with, I'm sure you're using other tools to manage this. You could use our platform as well to manage this, right?
Got
And
it.
at the same time, you have personal work that you do, right? For your family, maybe you're going to a concert, you're going to shows, you're going to do your taxes. We have a way for you to manage all of this content in one place, right? We have a good set of services and features that we provide. And then we have mobile apps on the app and Play stores, native mobile apps for you to do them on the apps. And the most recent product we launched, or the second most recent product, Charles, is we build APIs and publish them on AWS Marketplace and sell them as, for commercial licenses as well. So
Okay.
if you are building like mobile apps or web apps or any software system per se, you can integrate our APIs and build those systems in much quicker time. So you're not having to hire a backend team or spend a lot of money or go look for funding to get stuff done, right?
Got
So
it.
we essentially provision our backend systems so you can build your systems in much quicker time. And last but not least, we have an education platform. So Charles understands the CRM and the business that you just explained to me patiently for the last 60 minutes. If you create content around this and you want to sell this content as courses, you can publish that on our platform. And then for every unit of course that you sell, you get to keep like 80% and then we keep like 20% of the revenue, right?
Okay.
That's an education platform that we created because a lot of the other platforms like Coursera and Udemy, for instance, let you do it. Obviously, they're much larger, but they take again a lot more of the revenue from your sale,
Mm,
depending on the type of content that you create. With us, it's a flat 80/20. So no matter what you create, we do all of the hosting and you just make, we don't advertise your course, but we host it. So if the sale does happen by virtue of you placing ads or through your, network and whatnot, you get 80% of that, right? So that's kind of, so we are a product company. These are four of the products we actually currently work on. I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Okay, I gotcha.
Yep.
Uh,
Anything else that you want to ask me related to our conversation?
no, no. I was curious about well, who are your typical customers then? Because it seems
For
like
the
we work in two totally different industries.
Yeah, the B2B, for the B2B business of the APIs, it's anybody who's becoming an entrepreneur, who's starting a company or running a business, a software company, or not a software company, it could even be a service company, right? You're standing up these systems that you talked about. If they want to create a rich website or an application with a bunch of features, they can only focus on the user interface, which a lot of it can be generated these days, right? You don't have to code to any of these. And
Right.
to do the backend persistence and all of the backend layers that you need, you would integrate our APIs per se. So you don't even know what's needing to happen in the backend because somebody did this work for you. You just understand your business, build your user interfaces, and just literally plug into someone else's backend systems, which in this case happens to be Snowpal's backend systems essentially.
That's very cool. Yeah, no, we'll have to talk more about that. That's really interesting. I want to learn
Yeah,
more
I'm
about
happy
that.
to explain. But and thank you so much. I just have one last food question to you, and please stay on the call, Charles. After we are done, I just have a couple more things to ask you.
Sure.
My last non-technical question to you is: you're going out to dinner. You can pick the cuisine of your choice. What would be? It can be three different cuisines, right? Just give me your favorite on appetizer, favorite entree, and favorite dessert. They don't have to be in the same restaurant. It could be three different cuisines or the same left to you. But what would your ideal dinner order look like?
So I'm big on Italian food. Not huge on appetizers, but if I did go to an Italian restaurant, I'd likely start with some meatballs as an appetizer. Maybe some sort of. I tend to like lasagna when I'm going to get Italian. But I'm also notorious for just grabbing a great steak, um, usually cooked in medium rare. And then as far as desserts and things like that, I don't eat a lot of sugar, so I try to skip the dessert.
Okay, perfect. That looks like a good dinner. Again, folks, by way of introducing again, thanks Charles Craggett for taking the time to chat. I'm going to include we're going to include the links to your website and your Facebook page on the podcast. I'll usually pull up the share, but I started this on the desktop app and looks like I haven't granted privilege to share, so I couldn't pull this up. So my apologies.
It
But I
happens.
include the link to getjobflowsystem.com and then facebook.com/Craggett1. We'll include the links on the podcast. Charles is the founder of Become the Authority, a marketing automation agency. And we talked a lot about sales conversions, onboarding, integrations and AI, the impact and consumer behavior. So a number of things that, not everything I did know before I had this conversation with you, Charles. So thank you for educating me and our audience and much appreciate your time. Before we call it wraps, and please stay on the call, any closing comments before we call it wraps?
No, I appreciate you having me on, Krish. Thank you for the interview and everything. Again, if you guys are interested in learning how we function, or if you know a service business that needs some help, go ahead and send them to www.getjobflowsystem.com, and we can hook them up with our signature job flow framework that automates and systematizes their entire business.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Charles. Until next time, bye. Hey,